nearly a quarter of the United States is functionally unemployed. Here's what it means. And that is something that I did a 2-year study back in 2017 to 19 on. And so I think this is very interesting for our readers and viewers. When a person gets laid off and then their unemployment, let's say it's 16 weeks, expires and you get your last paycheck, your last unemployment check on week 16. Week 17, chances are excellent you're still unemployed, but you're no longer counted statistically by the government, which is how the unemployment rate never changes. The United States middle class has been hollowed out, and it's 79 trillion has been hollowed out of the middle class, and it's gone up.
But human society has always worked as a collective enterprise, as a collective mission and vocation. And that's what we're doing now, whether we recognize it or not.
Welcome to Global Civilization Dynamics and Fair Observer's second episode. I'm here with my colleague, Peter Isackson, and we're going to be discussing some very, very critical issues in society and the workplace. Aren't we, Peter?
We certainly are, and there's much to discuss.
That's absolutely right. So let's just jump right into it. I think we've got some very interesting things to discuss that were our next level, like things that we've never seen before. There was an article that was published in CNBC, and it was talking about the release of 2 new movies. And these 2 movies are basically about workplace struggle and anxiety. So I want to make sure that for our listeners and viewers, we tell them exactly which movies they are. So the 2 movies are called No Other Choice and Send Help. Now, I haven't seen them released on Netflix yet, but I'll have to take a look. But either they're in production or they're getting ready to be released. And so here's what they talk about, and here's what the subject matter is dealing with. They serve as a cathartic mirror for modern workplace angst and job seeker desperation. Ultimately, both of these movies are portraying what real life has been about since, I think, post-COVID. Yeah? Post-COVID, like 2020 to 2022, that was COVID. And then 2022, we really were coming out of it. People were enjoying getting off the mask. Worldwide businesses were reopening. People are going to the gyms, eating out. And then the explosion moment of when Microsoft announced that they were going to invest $10 billion into OpenAI, which is that point on the dot. And then AI took on this narrative. And so with that came a slowing of hiring. There were job losses that were extensive in 2023. Media kind of didn't want to discuss it too much. They reported it, but then they would kind of cover it up like the employee is resilient. 2024, 2025, 3 straight years of it. And in the United States, we hit a record of 1.21 to 1.3 million job losses. And there's no sign in that slowing down. So that's what these 2 movies are about. Ultimately, I've got a couple points that I have on my notes about what they are really talking about. And one of them is it's a kind of like a fantasy to make you, I'm assuming they're both comedies, or maybe they're comedy horror drama, whatever it is, maybe all 3 together. But there's probably got to be comedy elements, because one of them talks about an employee, an individual that thinks that he has to kill his own fellow employees to maintain his job. So that's got to be a comedy. But this is kind of, it's supposed to make a light of how bad we really feel when we're constantly looking for jobs. It gives us a psychological escape because it feels so distant and uncontrollable to get a job. No matter how qualified you are, you simply can't get one. What do you think, Peter? Your thoughts?
Yes, it's a major civilizational, a traumatic moment in our civilization. jobs identify us. What we do, actually, I would push this a little further and say it's productive activities that define who we are, that give us a sense of our identity. And for the moment, or at least for the past 100 or 150 years, we've assumed that it was the job that defined our activity. With the gig economy that we've seen, growing over the past 15, 20 years, it's not always jobs or unique. It's not exclusively jobs. So there's been a shift already in the emphasis. What is it that defines us? It's our professional activity, whatever makes us money. So we get into a further dimension of the problem because even money has changed its status in our society since the 2008 crash. Where does money come from? Who provides it? How is it managed? And where does it go? Does it go up or down? And we've seen a lot of it going up into the higher reaches of the population, the 1% or the 0.1%, whatever small percentage we're talking about, and then what's left at the bottom. So we've got people struggling with the notion of, can I get a gig if I don't have a job? Can I get a job if I don't have a gig? And that leads to a lot of anguish.
Agreed. And you said some very important things. Is it the money going up or is it going down? So there is already reports, 3 global reports from some of the best sources, credible sources like Wall Street Journal, Rand Corporation, etc., that have already highlighted where did the money go. So the jig is up. We know where the money went, but you didn't need me. You didn't need to read to tell you this, and you didn't even need to read those Wall Street or Rand reports. You can see it and you can feel it. It's in your eyes all the time, whether it's social media or unplugging from your phone for a minute and walking around and seeing. Go to some of the more expensive malls. You can see, who's going to afford that Rolex for $20,000, $30,000, right? So the money is going somewhere. We all know where it went, and so ultimately, the economics and the data already report that for the United States audience, the United States middle class has been hollowed out, and it's 79 trillion has been hollowed out of the middle class, and it's gone up. But getting back to this, what these movies are discussing, they're discussing based upon what you've just said. So if the money's all going up and we're in a stagnation economy, which the white collar, even tech worker, whether it's a programmer, project manager, they can all relate. It doesn't have to be just blue collar. It can be white collar too. IT jobs stagnation. I mean, that's one of my specialties. It has stagnated for about 20 years. I wrote an article a few years ago, maybe more than a few years ago, more like 10, where I said the 2001 Oracle DBA was with 5 to 7 years of experience was making 120 grand. Fast forward to from 2001 to 2021, the Oracle DBA with 5 to 7, 10 years of experience is making about 120, 130 grand. Hasn't moved, except the cost of living absolutely has moved. So if your father was an Oracle DBA in 1999, 2000, and he was making 120, he might have had a Cadillac, a new Cadillac. You, in 2025, making 120K, and maybe you've just got married or something, you're a young man also wanting to become a father. Well, you might be in the market for a used Civic or a Honda Accord, right? You're not getting a new Cadillac. The banana was 39 cents. Now it's $1.50. Everything. So if salaries stay and remain the same, except inflation and cost of goods go up. Your 120 is now 80 or 70. And that's kind of the point that I made when I was writing the article, years ago. What do you think about that?
Well, let's look at another case. If you were working for Oracle, will you be working next week? Because they've just laid off. I don't know how I haven't seen the.
I think it was 30,000 or 60,000. Yeah, it was a 6 a.m. email.
So it's not just a question of loss of income or loss of security, because when we're talking about the gig economy, we're talking about no security at all.
Yeah.
But it's also about whether there will be jobs for say, you got this job at Oracle 20 years ago. What about your kid who's just coming out of high school or college? Will there be a job for them? So the security question and the psychology of it is pretty deeply concerning today. You may be worried about your own situation, and you may be fighting to keep in the system and keep going with whatever security you have. And then you've got the kids. And I think that you mentioned an article in the New York Times about the youngsters and where they are coming out of college these days.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. Yeah. So ultimately, the rest of this article, these two films, they're supposed to be funny. They're trying to diffuse, right, all the anger and the anxiety to make light of, guess what? This is mainstream. Everybody's going through it, which is good. But so you don't feel like this is only happening to you. And what you just mentioned about, like, when you see these announcements, that's what they are, announcements. If anybody's been paying attention to the world of work, Oracle is the new bombshell announcement from a major company. But you know what? Last week it was Microsoft. The week before, 2 months before, it was Amazon with 30 to 60,000. Right? It doesn't stop. Big tech. Honestly, if you think about, if anybody were to research 2000 to 2025 and all the toxic corporate cultural articles written, it's written about big tech. A lot of it is written about the kind of environments that big tech is pushing, and having mass layoffs makes you have to think, who is there working on project, program, and forecasting, right? Can you not see things that are happening? How is it that you make these kinds of decisions? But ultimately, the article continues on with something called job hugging. Job hugging just simply means you're not looking for another job and you're holding onto your job. And that seems to be the exact same thing. I take it out. Take that word "seems" out. That is the case. So I'm letting. For our Gen Z audience, this is not new. You should not be feeling like the world is falling. It is in many ways off a cliff. But after the .com crash, job hugging was in place. That was in the year 2000 to 2003. That was what was going on. After the Great Recession of 08 to 10, 12, that one lasted a very long time. There was job hugging there. Whenever there's a huge economic problem and there's lots of layoffs, people hold on to their jobs and they stop looking for jobs. That's common sense. So ultimately, we have some movies that are going to at least tell the worldwide audience, it's not you. This is happening. There's a real problem, and it doesn't seem like anybody's working on it. So don't feel so bad. But Peter, you alluded to this new article that you and I actually were discussing and researching, and it has to do with It's interesting. I'm sure you have your notes about it, and I have it. So I'm going to show it to our audience just so they can see it. I hope this comes out. The economics of degree have changed. And it says college graduates are mired in debt with no path to jobs suiting their credentials. Once again, for our younger career audience, younger adults, I want you all to know that what it's talking about with no path to jobs suitable with their credentials, that has happened once again. Research the 21st century and its post-economic crashes. It's called the post-economic long tail. There's a recession point. What is the post-economic recession long tail? Dot-com crash point, it lasted 3 years. 08 Great Recession point, it lasted about 5 years. This COVID, we almost got out of it, and then now AI. So it's a double whammy recession point, if you want to call it that.
There's a triple whammy now with what's going on in the world with the war in Iran.
With tariffs, right. I mean, right. Tariffs is a tax on us. That's what it is. And it's just, you don't need me to tell you. Yeah, every company, whether they're in America or China or anywhere else on the planet, are saying, yeah, we're passing that on to the consumer. So we're all paying for the tariffs, but you don't need me to tell you that. AI will tell you that, whether it's Google, Gemini, OpenAI, or anybody. You can do your own research. But the economics of degrees have changed, and it talks about, and I'll just give a little bit. It says, when too many people graduate from college with useless degrees, sky-high debt, and long odds of owning a home, people rebel. And then it says, perhaps most alarming is the recent graduates that are having an even harder time than in the past recessions. And so ultimately, the economics of these degrees, they're talking about useless degrees, is how they called it. But what they don't talk about are the useful degrees. So let's break that down for our audience. Peter, you read the article. What's your take on it?
Well, I have mixed feelings about the article itself, which I find to reflect the kind of pessimism that's now obvious and been obvious for some time in the light of the various crises we've been talking about. And I don't want to underplay the latest crisis, which is the war in Iran. It may end in 2 weeks, as Trump has promised or suggested, but it may go on. And we have no idea. Nobody has any idea what effect it's going to have on the global economy. But it's already a bad one, and it may get worse. So I don't want to be totally pessimistic. I think there are good reasons to hope. But this article was very grim, I think, in the way it presented the situation of young people graduating college. For example, there's one sentence. It says, in effect, a gap has opened up between the life that many graduates believed they had been promised and their actual prospects, and they're seething about it. So you mentioned the feeling of revolt. We could expect revolt, but when things are objectively bad all around, it's not clear who you want to revolt against. You had the No Kings demonstrations this last week. That's protesting against the government, but it's not government policy, or it's not any single government policy that people can identify, or any single person, including Trump himself, that can be held responsible, or where you can feel that if you could solve that problem, then everything could come back to normal. Now, we've got a lot of problems to deal with. But what the article is saying basically is that, because you asked me about the degrees and their value is that it's pretty grim, it's pretty dismal, to the extent that our educational system has saddled people with debt, to which was done in the name of realizing the 21st century American dream of having the right education and then getting into a healthy job market, which of course people have been talking about for the last at least 15 years as being, and I remember this from the Obama years, of encouraging people to do coding because that was the future. So now we've got the new problem of AI that's telling us that we don't need coders anymore. So the people who were encouraged to get a degree in coding, in IT, are now faced with the problem, will there be any jobs in IT? And of course there will, and we know that. What we're seeing, and this is the good side of it, we're seeing a lot of things changing. I believe in the resilience of humans and human society. I don't think the society we have today is well prepared. So I don't know where the various crises we're being subjected to are going to lead. But I do believe that that we now have a lot of tools that people are kind of aware of. And it's a question of how we design the way we use those tools to address the various problems we see and to readjust so many essential elements of the system that we can now see are broken, and we can move forward. So to answer your question about what I see as good opportunities in terms of education and vocation, I don't have a clear answer to that, but I think there will be an increasing demand for people who can intervene in the various sectors where everything has to be rethought out. We need, as a civilization, to rethink everything. So anything that leads to thinking, to critical thinking, I think will be the wave of the future as far as education and job profiles are concerned.
Most of the research that I'm looking at says that critical thinking is one of the top skills. And I would say that this moment in time, where it says that the economics of degrees have changed and they're downplaying, they're upplaying the devaluation of the degree, is unfortunate. There is not in my opinion, if a person goes to spend 4 years, that critical 4 years to go from teenager to just becoming in their first 2 years of 18 to 21, there is, and there always has been for 1,000 years, there was always a value for advancing your brain into becoming a multidisciplinary thinking machine. That is not a failure. That is an investment that parents, children, and society have made. For this moment in time to say, oh, we've decided that it's not of value. Who are these few people that are creating this narrative for worldwide or your particular nation that, oh, the degrees don't matter? I think the pendulum will swing and it's going to come back and it's going to say how important degrees are ever before. There's somebody just going to start saying this in about 1 to 2 years, maybe 3 years. They're going to say how important degrees are, because there is no way that advancing your brain, like in a basic bachelor's degree, your first 2 years, you have to study chemistry, astronomy, physics, math, business, human resources, IT, right? Learning the fundamental layers of all of these pieces and how they interconnect is not a failure for any human. That's my opinion. And I believe it's sound. As a behavioral scientist who has multiple degrees in IT, technology, and in business, organization dynamics, and behavioral sciences. There's just no way. The whole point of the American dream was to uplift yourself. Getting education, whether it's blue collar education, white collar, gray collar, or a blue white collar, which, I mean, if you're learning about hardwares and non-hardware, if you're learning how to play with and design with tools and technologies, right? That's hardware, or that's hard skills, and then there's soft skills. Learning these things will only make a person better. So the greatest investment a person makes is in their own brain and in themselves. I don't see how anybody's going to say, yeah, investing in yourself is not valuable. And I don't really think that a lot of the top 20% of every nation's parents, I don't see any of them saying, no, we're not sending our kids to school. No, they're doubling down. They're sending them to some of the best schools. So I believe that the economics of degrees is sound. Taking the right degrees, of course, matters. And they are talking about getting rid of some degrees. That's fine. But I think the narrative about this is overblown. What do you say, Peter?
Well, I would disagree with you on that.
Okay.
I mean, I'll take a contrary position. This is a book that came out very recently in France, translated into French, into English. It's don't study, don't do studies, don't go for a degree. It's written by, one of them is an economist, university professor, and the other is an entrepreneur and an author of books about sociology and other things. The case they make is that in the age, because of AI, it's going to be difficult to continue doing education the way it's been done in the past. This is going to be a revolution. There are two problems. One is that education, as it's traditionally been structured around the degrees we've been talking about, aims at preparing people for jobs that no longer exist, or job profiles that no longer exist. So that's a big problem. The other is that the way people learn has become very different. We saw that already with e-learning, but e-learning didn't have much impact. And I was very much involved in the e-learning movement in the early 2000s. In fact, I could refer back to a controversy I participated in that was published by ASTD on the ASTD site, where Sam Adkins contributed an article with the title of something like, "Are we snake oil salesmen?" That is, the people who are promoting e-learning. And I totally agreed with that. E-learning, like any other technology, like AI today, a lot of it is snake oil. A lot of it it's a new industry, it's a new concept, and people know that some people are going to profit from it. So who comes to the fore? The snake oil salesman. That doesn't mean there's nothing valuable in it, or there's not going to produce something. 10 years later, I was also involved because I was working on a research and R&D level on new pedagogical uses of technology. And that was the gamification movement. Everyone said gamification is how people are going to learn. Well, it isn't about gamification. Learning is, as you were saying earlier, it's about developing critical thinking skills. And that's what we're beginning to realize. And here's where I think AI is going to help. But as I said earlier, what we need is calling into question the way our institutions worked in the past and adjusting to what the new possibilities are. AI is a kind of intelligence. It's an artificial kind of intelligence. So we have to keep our attention focused on the fact that it's artificial, but it is intelligence, and there's no doubt about that. If we're talking about developing critical thinking, the one thing everyone seems to agree on is that AI does not actually do critical thinking. It emulates or it reproduces examples of critical thinking that people have produced. So there's a major effort to be made in the educational field, in the corporate field, that is, in the HR field, in any case. There's a major effort to be made looking at how the intelligence provided by whatever AI we decide to use or discover there is a use for can contribute to the way we manage, thanks to our critical thinking, the humans who will be hired, who may already be in place but need to be reorientated to these new qualities that are required, professional qualities that are required. But we have to create a new social network with AI, which is a social network where we're dealing with people who are using their full capacity of their brains, and the AI that's using the fuller but more limited capacity of its intelligence. So I'm very hopeful that if we all start working on these things, it's going to move somewhere. But there's also the problem of the resistance of those who don't want to see it change, or they like the way things were in the past. So we're in a revolutionary period.
I would agree with everything you just said about AI and it being a tool that people will continue to use more and more and more, and it'll be part of more and more of our lives. I don't disagree.
But we don't know how to use it yet.
Right now, so a good example is that people use it to create their emails. People use it to do research. People use it to ideate, to create their own conceptual ideas for papers or whatever they are. These are some of the ways that people are using it. There's many other ways that of course, pharmaceutical companies are using it, and high tech are using it. So it is being used, and it has been used for quite some time. Going back, well, I guess let's move away from degrees and move into the fact that we don't know. Okay, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Sorry, degrees are important because that's the only way we know how to understand that element of identity we were talking about earlier. Who am I? What kind of certification do I have? Even if it's artificial.
That's why I'm saying degrees absolutely matter to each human being. A young person needs to go and get a degree. It's not a negative; it's a positive. So the degrees of economics have changed. I'm saying that the pendulum will swing back, and they're going to reverse that this narrative and this thesis that everyone's drinking from. It's not going to stay. It's not going to stick. And by the way, just because this is in the American Wall Street Journal doesn't mean that many other nations. It's my opinion from my sources and what I understand on global economics. There's plenty of nations that are like, yeah, let them think that. That's not. We're not going to go with that route. We think that the economics of a degree is sound. I think when companies lay off people, it's not that, and they're using this like, oh, people with these degrees don't, and their careers and their work don't matter. That's not what this is about. It is my opinion that companies lay off people because they've changed their trajectory of where their business objectives want to go abruptly sometimes because they're losing money. And so there's plenty of other reasons why. It's because of bad decision making, change in objective, wanting to invest billions, if not hundreds, tens or hundreds of billions of dollars in data centers. So where are we going to get the money? We have to lay people off. It's stuff like that, right? That's what this really comes down to. It's about other things that are not reported. Basically, what I wanted to bring your attention to this next part about was the CEO and founder of, well, I should just call him Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic. He's saying that his Anthropic models was operating at a high school level. Now it's already operating at a college level. And so he has this huge fear that there's going to be this mega mass disruption in layoffs that is going to explode. And he sees unemployment getting to 20%. And that's what he was talking about. I'm shocked, personally, that a technology can be unleashed onto society where the entire society says, okay, it's here. Let's lay off all these people and just implement it. Like it's as if no one in business or government can slow down the machine to not wreak havoc on civilization. This is something that is very puzzling to me, Peter, that when AI, OpenAI or Anthropic or any of these models say our AI models can now compete with college students, and then what are they going to say in 2 years? Maybe like, a prime-aged person, a PhD level. If the AI can do that, although we always keep hearing that you have to keep checking it because it hallucinates, then what's the point of releasing a technology onto a civilization or a nation society when it can create such havoc? Any thought about that?
Oh, I've got plenty of thoughts about that. We've created a civilization which puts forward the idea that you succeed by moving fast and breaking things. Just to quote Mark Zuckerberg, apparently he considered that to be replaceable probably for reasons of political correctness, because it sounds irresponsible, but it is irresponsible, and yet it's a factor in the civilization we've produced. So it's in some ways inevitable that everything you've been citing from Dario and others about unleashing things simply because people are making money out of them, really, all that's true. It's going to happen. But it's not going to happen, I don't think, in the way that that it's easy to project. You can say that, first of all, I throw into doubt any comparison that's made about high school level, college level, PhD level. I'm not even sure that those levels mean anything for humans, but whatever they mean in terms of job performance or professional competency, they don't, as I was saying earlier, they don't compare with what humans actually do. Humans do have totally spontaneous critical thinking, which is based on their relationship with their environment. AI has no relationship with its environment. So long as professional activities are concerned with managing environments, and the environment is internal to, let's say, the corporate context, but also to the marketplace. It's like being a comic, a stand-up comic. You got to read the room. IA doesn't read the room. It's not been taught to read the room.
No.
Humans, in many cases, have been taught not to read the room, just to rely on the competencies that they've acquired or the knowledge they've acquired in their education. And this is an unfortunate trend of the past. So I think we're going to move into, the pressure is on us now to move into a phase where, as a civilization, and that means our educational institutions, our corporate entities, anything that's a human activity of production, will learn to read the room, and that can, and AI can help us in that, but it won't do the reading. That's why the humans, who are going to be active in the economy, will have to play that role and learn to play that role very actively and endowed with a good sense of critical thinking. So that's how I see things. I think that's the most important thing. The other thing is that when you say that because statistically we're doing so many, AI is doing so many tasks that we rely on people to do today, and therefore that will replace 20% of the workforce. That doesn't make sense, because
So I'm saying that that's what Dario says could happen. Okay, it's more of the hypotheticals. We are surely seeing a lot of layoffs that have to do with AI, whether it's AI replacing the worker, or in many cases, companies want to invest a lot of money into AI. They don't have the money, so they're laying people off. There's not one reason.
They're putting the money in data centers. They're putting it in technology.
Yes, 100%. So that's all I'm saying, is that people are being laid off every single day, and it's not 2 or 3 years. This is the 4th year of consistent layoffs just in the United States. So obviously this is happening in many other countries too. It's probably, in my opinion, I have to think in this 21st century. I mean, the 2018 crash was really bad. We had layoffs all the way to 2013 and past. So, I mean, this is just the same kind of thing, right? Every decade has a multi-year recessionary point. This one happens to be, the AI revolution is not a pandemic, a disease pandemic. It's not a recession that has to do with like some massive war on America in Americans, right? Ours is an AI recession, right? It's companies are investing lots of money. They don't have the money, so they have to lay off. That's what I'm trying to say. The other thing I wanted to say is moving away from this point about Anthropic. So he's projecting that, and there's many other people that are projecting we're going to have layoffs for many more years, which is unbelievably disappointing, because it's what you just said earlier about management. We don't have a business. We need better business leaders and better government leaders, state and government, federal, to manage, and they don't seem to be knowing how to manage. But there's a lot of reports and data and statistics that have been talking about the problem of leadership. Not today, not yesterday. It's been for quite some time. I do want to make sure that I hit on one last thing before we end our program for this month, and that it is this. There was a report that I read that was last year. And so today's unemployment report came out. And last night I read that we were hoping that it would be somewhere between more than 65,000 jobs for the month of March, right? That's for the U.S. It came out at like 178,000. So that's like great news. That means also that we won't have a rate cut. This isn't about rate cut or rate point, but it's amazing to me that we've had so many layoffs, but the unemployment rate hovers around the same percentage points. And so Fast Company wrote an article last year called "Nearly a Quarter of the United States is Functionally Unemployed." Here's what it means. And that is something that I did a 2-year study back in 2017 to 19 on. And so I think this is very interesting for our readers and viewers. And here's what it says. It's talking about functional unemployment, which takes into account those who are job seeking yet unable to find work, as well as those with full-time jobs whose earnings put them below the poverty line of under $25,000 per year. Now, the functional unemployment rate has risen, and at the time that this was written, it was 24.4%, which meant that nearly 1 in 4 U.S. adults is considered functionally unemployed. And there are little signs for improvement for for dependable, good-paying jobs. To go further, for Black workers, it's 26.7%. Again, at the time that I was reading this, this article was published, which was last year. I think it was March of last year. For the rate of men, it was around. It said for white workers, it was 23.1 to 23%. So again, Black workers 26.7, white workers 23.1%. And it said that for women's true unemployment rate dipped down to 28.6. So look, that was last year. And if our readers, our viewers, not our readers, understand what this means, they should really educate themselves on what functional unemployment is. And when it is 1 in 4 adults, that is a staggering number that you rarely hear business, if not at all, and rarely hear policymakers discuss. But if this is something you should be thinking about, because this matters to you. 1 in 4, that's too high. That was this time last year. It's got to have it. It has to have gotten higher. It cannot not have gotten higher. And so
it's getting worse, and it's destined to get worse in the coming weeks and months.
It has gotten worse since a year ago when this was written, and it's destined to get even worse. But I want to explain in layman's terms. I'm not saying that our viewers need it, but what does this really mean when it says people are looking for work, yet they're full-time jobs? Let me give great examples, because I was in talent acquisition, and I watched this happen way before any of this writing and this stuff was written. And that's because I was inside the machine of hiring, boots in the ground, if you will, in the trenches. So when a person gets laid off and then their unemployment, let's say it's 16 weeks, expires, and you get your last paycheck, your last unemployment check on week 16. Week 17, chances are excellent you're still unemployed, but you're no longer counted statistically by the government, which is how the unemployment rate never changes. So the long-term unemployment grows. And then if you were a project manager for a software, or you're a Java developer, or you were a hospital technician, or you were even a performance car mechanic. It doesn't matter. Any of these jobs, millions of jobs that pay 60, 70, 80, 120, 150, 150,000, any of these jobs, and you get your job is eliminated, you get your unemployment. After your last unemployment check, you're still unemployed. So you get a job driving Uber or DoorDash or pizza delivery or Walmart greeter or cashier, and you make significantly less than you were making. If you're making 100 or 80 and you're now making 25, you're counted as full-time employed. Consider what this means. The government is counting you as unemployed, as employed. You're a full-time worker. Are you? Or have you had to shave off 75% of your expenses? Maybe you stop going to the gym. Maybe you stop going to the doctor. Maybe you stop doing all kinds of things. You stop going out to eat. And all you're doing is maybe working 6-7 days a week, driving for Uber and getting up, driving, making a quarter, and then there are other ramifications. For example, one of the biggest problems that men have that become fathers and husbands is when they lose their job for long-term unemployment, they get divorced. Number one reason for divorce is finance, financial difficulties. So it's a rippling effect. The pond of unemployment is the rock in the pond, and then the ripple effects grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just wanted to make sure that I explained what functional unemployment is. It's worldwide. You never hear about it. What say you, Peter? Any thoughts about functional unemployment?
Well, I totally agree. It's part of it. So it's. I mean, we're painting a pretty grim picture of the world and the possibilities of employment. I want to insist on the fact that the more we understand these things, the more we will understand collectively the pressure we're under to rethink everything: our politics, our education, the principles of finance that we base our economic activity on, and people are thinking about this. In fact, there's a lot of jobs, not jobs to be created, but human activity to be built up, and it may be in various places, not necessarily traditional corporations, but there are a lot of things that can emerge, and we don't know what they are. But when you're under pressure, these things will emerge, and they will force us to rethink what we mean by human activity, how it's remunerated, and it's not. You've been talking about levels of salary, but that's not the only thing. You've also been talking about really the psychological trauma that of the cases you've mentioned, of people having to drop down from what they considered to be a comfortable position, which means that people are psychologically uncomfortable. And if we recognize there's a point at which, as a society, and I think we're getting there, where we have to focus on what we know about these things, how we can analyze them, why the kinds of things we're doing in this kind of discussion can help people to understand and help us to understand. Once we share that knowledge amongst ourselves, this is where I believe in social resilience. We've focused up to now on how individuals create their own personal identity and their own set of ambitions and their vocation and their occupation and their future. But human society has always worked as a collective enterprise, as a collective mission and vocation, and that's what we're doing now, whether we recognize it or not. But I have a strong belief that because we're beginning to understand these things, they're beginning to become clearer. We're not convinced by the solutions that our governments and different authorities are telling us are waiting for us or are being elaborated now. We no longer have confidence in that. You've talked endlessly about the crisis of trust in the workplace. Well, we have trust at every level of society now.
Untrust,
Yeah,
mistrust, distrust.
distrust, exactly. So we have. I believe that we are engaged in a different operation of rebuilding trust, redefining the terms of trust. We don't trust the people who've told us that they know what's good for us. We
Right.
now
This is what they brought.
trust.
They in many ways, the entire house has been brought down, right? At
That's
this
right.
point, the whole house has been brought down. So there's every reason to believe everybody, whether it's, and I hope that people start to realize it's about the people together. People need to get back in the canoe together, right? It's not even about Gen Z, Gen Y, and Gen X. They should all be separated, and you shouldn't talk to. No, that's how this happened. It's not about black and white. It's not about left or right. It's not up and down. This is a collective, and so when the whole house is brought down like this, ultimately, swinging all the way back around to the beginning of this episode. That is why Hollywood has said, wow, the whole house has come down.
Yeah.
This is where we get into action and make a comedy or a drama or a comedy drama. And then, that's why, if Hollywood gets it, that means the whole world is talking about it. And so that's where we are. And I think that might be a really great place for us to leave our audience, right? Go and watch something funny about this. Make yourself laugh. About the case, the state of your life, your family's life, your society, your colleagues' lives, and understand it's not you. You didn't do the wrong thing. There's a lot of people that don't know what they're doing, and a lot of things that are happening so fast at the same time that it's making a lot of people uncomfortable, and it's and at the same time, a lot of people that are talented are trying to figure out how to put these pieces together, right? I mean, it's a lot of stuff happening all at the same time. It's not you who's so confused. These movies are probably are showcasing it's what you feel is real, and so that's, I think, a good way to end our episode for this month.
Okay. Well, thank you, Vinay. That's
So until next month, on behalf of my colleague Peter, I'm Vinay Singh, and this is Global Civilization Dynamics with Fair Observer. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.